This morning, almost a month after Nancy Guthrie went missing, investigators still combing through surveillance footage from the area around her house.
Tucson is on edge as the search for Nancy Guthrie enters its fourth week with no sign of the vibrant grandmother. The trail was cold until a massive break in the case led the FBI to tow a car and bring in a family member for questioning. And get this, the interrogation lasted for 6 hours and ended with a confession that changed the entire direction of the search. It is a horrifying update that involves deep financial debt and a changing inheritance. What most people don't realize is that the masked man on camera might not be a stranger after all. Justice arrives in Tucson. Everything seemed perfect until the family's secret started bubbling to the surface and the peace of the desert was shattered. Nancy Guthrie was a woman who enjoyed the quiet life in the Catalina foothills of Arizona. At 84 years old, she was a symbol of strength for her daughters, including the famous journalist Savannah Guthrie. She lived in an upscale neighborhood where the mountains looked like silent guards over the city of Tucson. Everyone knew her as a kind and vibrant woman who loved her grandchildren more than anything else in the world. She was the kind of person who always had photos of her family in her purse and a smile on her face. But on the morning of February 1st, 2026, that peace was gone forever. Nancy was missing from her home and the circumstances were absolutely chilling. When her family went to check on her, they found her bed unmade and her home eerily quiet. For starters, her purse was gone, but her heart medication and blood pressure pills were still sitting right there on the nightstand. This is a key detail because without that medicine, an 84-year-old woman is in immediate danger. The local sheriff's department in Pima County knew right away that this was not a simple case of a senior citizen getting lost. There was no sign that anyone had forced their way into the house, but the doorbell camera had been messed with. The FBI was called in almost immediately because of how high-profile the case was. They started looking at every single person who had contact with Nancy in the hours before she disappeared. It turns out she had dinner with her daughter Annie and her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, on the night of January 31st. And they said it was a lovely evening full of laughter and memories about Nancy's late husband, Charles, who passed away in 2020 from heart issues. Tommaso told the police that he drove Nancy home around 9:45 that night and saw her walk safely into her house. But here's the catch. The FBI found surveillance footage that tells a very different story. A masked figure was seen on the doorbell camera at 2 in the morning. This person was wearing dark clothes, gloves, and a heavy backpack. They knew exactly where the camera was and how to disable it. And get this, the agents found a second image of the same person from earlier that evening without the backpack. This means the person was scouting the house. They were planning this. They knew Nancy's routine. The crazy part is that the FBI recovered a glove near the property that had DNA on it. While it did not match anything in the national database, they started comparing it to people close to the family. Yeah, what most people don't realize is that Nancy was planning to change her will. She had a multi-million-dollar estate and she was going to meet with her lawyer to reduce the share for one of her daughters. This creates a massive motive that involves a lot of money. Everyone is obsessed with the idea of a stranger abduction, but the federal agents were looking much closer to home. They focused on Tommaso Cioni, the Italian businessman who was the last person to see her. Oh, wait until you hear what the neighbors saw just minutes before the doorbell camera went dark. Bloodlines and broken trusts. The investigation took a dark turn when rumors of a secret interrogation started leaking out of the federal building. For weeks, the local sheriff had been telling the public that the family was cleared and that they were being very helpful. But the FBI does things differently, and they were not ready to let anyone off the hook just yet. They had been tracking financial records and phone calls that did not match the stories they were being told. Basically, they found out that Tommaso was facing huge financial problems. His business ventures were failing, and he allegedly owed over $250,000 in debt. This is not a small amount of money, and for someone married into a wealthy family, the pressure must have been intense. So, here's the deal. The FBI brought him in for a 6-hour questioning session that was supposed to be confidential. But in the world of high-profile cases, nothing stays secret for long. Reports started coming out that the agents confronted him with a phone call that was made at 2:47 in the morning. That is almost the exact time the masked figure was seen at Nancy's house. The call was allegedly to a cousin named Marcus, and they were talking about Nancy's condition. And that's putting it lightly, because the transcript suggests they were discussing where to take her. The FBI also had his laptop, and what they found on there was horrifying. There were searches for how to bypass security cameras and how to handle an elderly person who is resisting. It was a calculated move, hands down. During the interrogation, Tommaso supposedly started to crack. He didn't admit to everything at first, but he couldn't explain why his car was seen on a different camera near Nancy's house at 3 in the morning. He had told the police he was home in bed with his wife. The lies were starting to fall apart like a house of cards. It is not that simple, though, because Nancy's body has still not been found. The interrogation supposedly revealed that she was taken to a remote location in the desert, miles away from the foothills. The son-in-law allegedly confessed that the plan was to hide her until the will could no longer be changed, or until they could force her to sign something else. It is a level of greed that is hard to even imagine. The agents were reportedly horrified by how calm he stayed during the first few hours of the talk. He acted like a concerned family member, even shedding tears for the cameras. But once they showed him the GPS data from his phone, the act was over. The crazy part is that he supposedly blamed the financial stress and said he never intended for anyone to get hurt. But leaving an 84-year-old woman without her medicine in the middle of the desert is a death sentence. The public is now wondering if this was ever about a kidnapping at all, or if it was something much more permanent from the very beginning. The mystery deepens when you look at the secret basement no one knew existed under the old ranch house. Our shadow in the foothills. Searching the Arizona desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack that is hundreds of miles wide. The terrain is rough, full of cacti, and the temperature swings are extreme. After the alleged confession, the FBI moved their search to a specific area north of Tucson. They used drones with heat sensors and teams of dogs that are trained to find people. The family was devastated by the news that the investigation was now a recovery mission instead of a rescue. A Savannah Guthrie made an emotional plea to the public, offering $1 million just to bring her mother home. This is a key detail because it shows the family was starting to lose hope that she was still alive. They knew the clock had run out on her health. What most people don't realize is how much a case like this affects a community. People in the Catalina foothills started locking their doors and installing extra cameras. They felt like the shadow of a monster was hanging over their beautiful mountains. The FBI agents were seen back at Nancy's house on February 25, 2026. They were looking for anything they might have missed the first time around. They were digging in the yard and using special lights to look for traces of biological material. Yeah, about that, they reportedly found something in the trunk of a car that was towed away earlier in the month. And it was a small piece of fabric that matched the pajamas Nancy was wearing on the night she vanished. If that fabric has her DNA on it, the case is basically over. But here's the catch. The legal team for the son-in-law is claiming that the interrogation was done under duress and that the confession is not real. They say he was tired and confused and that the agents tricked him. This is a common tactic in big cases, but it doesn't change the fact that Nancy is still missing. The investigation also uncovered that a delivery driver named Carlos Alfredo Palazuelos was detained earlier in the month. He had nothing to do with the Guthries, but a tip said Nancy was being held in his mother-in-law's house. The FBI raided the place and found nothing. This shows just how many false leads the agents had to deal with. It wasted precious time when every second mattered for Nancy's survival. Here, the son-in-law's involvement seems more likely every day because of the specific knowledge needed to get into that house. The person knew where Nancy slept and they knew she would be alone. They even knew how to get past the gate in the community. It wasn't a random crime, it was an inside job. The horrifying part of the confession was the detail about how Nancy looked at him when he entered her room. She recognized him, she trusted him, and that is the ultimate betrayal. A strange witness has just come forward with a video that was recorded on a hunter's trail camera. Billion-dollar betrayal. Money has a way of changing people, and when there are millions of dollars on the line, some people will do the unthinkable. Nancy Guthrie was worth a lot of money, and her estate was a major point of interest for everyone involved. The FBI found out that the meeting with her lawyer was scheduled for the very next day after she disappeared. That is too much of a coincidence to ignore. If she had signed those papers, the son-in-law and his wife would have lost out on a huge portion of their inheritance. So here's the deal. The motive was not just about debt, it was about securing a future of luxury. The confession reportedly included details about how the plan was discussed for months. They had looked at different locations in the desert where no one ever goes. They chose a spot that was hidden by old mine shafts and deep ravines. It is a place where the sun is brutal during the day and the coyotes howl all night. The crazy part is that the FBI found a cousin named Marcus, who was allegedly supposed to help with the disposal of the evidence. Marcus has not been charged yet, but he is being watched 24 hours a day. The interrogation tapes supposedly show the son-in-law breaking down when he realized his cousin had already talked to the feds. This is a key detail because it shows that there was a conspiracy. It wasn't just one person acting alone, it was a family member and an associate working together to harm an elderly woman for her money. What most people don't realize is that this happens more often than we think. Financial elder abuse is a huge problem in the United States, but it rarely ends in a high-profile disappearance like this. The Today Show connection made it a national headline, but at its core it is a sad story about a woman who was betrayed by the people she loved. The FBI is still processing all the data from the cell towers in the area. They can see exactly where every phone was at 3 in the morning. Even if someone turns their phone off, the last known location is still recorded. And get this. The son-in-law's phone pinged a tower near the remote desert location right at dawn. He claimed he was out for a morning drive to clear his head because he was stressed about Nancy being missing, but he hadn't even reported her missing yet. The timeline does not work. Basically, he was caught in his own web of lies. The confession is horrifying because it shows a complete lack of empathy. He allegedly talked about Nancy like she was an object that needed to be moved, not a human being who had given him a family and a home. The public is demanding justice, and the pressure on the district attorney to file charges is growing every single day. The investigation continues as the world waits for the final word on what truly happened to Nancy Guthrie. Can we ever really trust the people closest to us when millions are at stake? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more updates.